I've lived a whole life living naturally and in a way that I believe in, living my passion. And I like sharing that passion and that way of life with other folks.
Have you been to Conway's little corner in the world? When people first walk into Eustace Conway's barn, they expect the usual things like some tools, a few bales of hay, nothing special. But what they actually find surprises them. The place feels alive, almost like a story frozen in time. Every wall, every handmade tool says something about Eustace, a man who built his life with his bare hands and kept old ways alive in a modern world. But there's something that leaves visitors truly speechless. What could it be? A barn of mystery. If you ever find yourself deep in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, somewhere along the dirt paths leading to Turtle Island Preserve, you'll come across Eustace Conway's land, a place that feels completely untouched by time. And right in the middle of it stands his old barn. It's not like the ones you see in movies or on postcards. There's no shiny red paint or tidy fences here. It's rough, hand-built, and full of stories. The first thing you notice when stepping inside is the smell, a mix of earth, leather, wood, and animals. The air is thick with years of hard work. Old saddles hang on hooks made from bent nails. Tools that look 100 years old still gleam from regular use. There are piles of rope, handmade traps, axes, and even bits of metal that once belonged to wagons or blacksmith's gear. It's not a barn made to impress. It's a barn that works. But what's really surprising isn't any single object. It's how much the place feels like a museum of survival. Eustace has turned his barn into a working symbol of everything he believes in: self-reliance, respect for the land, and living simply. In a world obsessed with new technology and convenience, stepping inside that barn feels like walking into a different era. You can almost sense how quiet and honest life must have been before phones, machines, and rush hours took over. Visitors often describe the feeling as overwhelming. There's something deeply human about seeing what a person can build without electricity, power tools, or modern comforts. Every beam of the barn was cut, shaped, and lifted by hand. Every piece of furniture, every shelf, even the hinges on the doors, they're all handmade. It's the kind of craftsmanship most people only read about. And then there are the collections. Eustace doesn't hoard in the usual sense. Everything in the barn has a purpose. In one corner, you'll find preserved hides from deer and raccoons, tanned and ready to be used for clothing or trade. In another, a small table filled with glass jars, herbs, seeds, salves, and natural medicines he's gathered from the forest. There's even a spot where he keeps old tools passed down from neighbors who lived and worked the land long before him. It's like a timeline of Appalachian history told through objects that still do their jobs. But maybe the most fascinating thing in that barn isn't what's stored there, it's what it represents. To Eustace, this isn't just a workspace. It's a way of living proof. Every nail, every tool is a quiet protest against modern dependency. While most people can't go a day without a grocery store or a phone charger, he's built a life that barely needs either. And that's where the real shock comes in. Standing there, you realize that Eustace's world isn't fiction. It's real and functioning. He raises his own food, fixes his own shelter, and teaches others how to do the same. The barn is more than a building. It's a classroom. Here, people learn how to split wood properly, cure meat, make soap, and craft tools from raw materials. Everything that happens inside connects to a simple truth. Humans can still live in balance with nature, just like our ancestors did. Sometimes, students or visitors stumble upon strange-looking tools or bones and wonder if they've found something ancient. But when Eustace explains it, they realize those odd items are just parts of daily life, things modern society forgot how to make or use. To him, Nothing is trash. Everything can be reused, repaired, or reshaped. The barn isn't filled with secrets. It's filled with knowledge we've lost. Does he rub it to people's faces that he's living better? That part surprises people is Eustace himself. He doesn't preach about his lifestyle.
But there's no common sense at all in this culture anymore.
And he doesn't claim to have all the answers. He simply lives by example. His barn, in a way, is his statement to the world that happiness doesn't have to come from luxury or money. It can come from purpose, from work that matters, from knowing that everything around you came from your own two hands. And that realization tends to hit hard. For visitors who come from cities where even coffee comes from a machine, standing in that barn can be humbling. It's not just a glimpse of the past, it's a mirror showing how far society has drifted from its roots. What fascinates people is because they were reminded of something deeply uncomfortable, that a single man living off the grid might be more capable, more fulfilled, and maybe even freer than the rest of us. Eustace's barn isn't just a part of his land, it's the heart of it. It's where he teaches, builds, and keeps the spirit of independence alive. In a way, it's less of a barn and more of a message, one that says you can live simply and still live well. What led him to build a world apart from everyone else? Has he always been that way? The modern American hermit. To understand why Eustace Conway's barn feels so extraordinary, you have to understand the man who built it. Eustace isn't just another farmer or outdoorsman. He's a living symbol of what it means to reject modern comforts and return to something real. Born in 1961 in South Carolina, Eustace grew up surrounded by nature. From a young age, he wasn't interested in video games or TV. He wanted to be outside. By the time most kids were learning to ride bikes, Eustace was learning how to trap animals, build shelters, and start fires using nothing but sticks and patience. That love for the wilderness never went away. At just 17 years old, he left his home and moved into a teepee in the woods. That wasn't a summer experiment or a camping phase. It was his real home for over a decade. He cooked over open fires, gathered food from the land, and lived without electricity or running water. It sounds extreme, but to Eustace, it made perfect sense. He believed modern life had made people soft and disconnected. Living close to the earth was, to him, the most natural way to exist. People who visit him now at Turtle Island Preserve often describe him as a mix between a philosopher, craftsman, and teacher. He's direct, grounded, and brutally honest. He doesn't romanticize his lifestyle. He knows it's hard. But that's the point. For Eustace, hard work builds more than muscle. It builds character. He believes that when people work with their hands, they remember what it feels like to earn their place in the world.
Through all of that time, everybody on planet Earth has made their own house. In fact, that's been important.
Over the years, his name became more well-known thanks to his appearances on the History Channel's Mountain Men. The show followed his daily life at the preserve, hunting, fixing buildings, teaching students, and living completely off-grid.
Of turning Turtle Island into a self-sustaining preserve, where like-minded people can come to work hard and live free.
While television tends to dramatize, what viewers saw from Eustace was genuine. He didn't act for the cameras. What they filmed was the real thing, a man who wakes up with the sunrise, works until sunset, and finds joy in simplicity. But behind that calm and humble image is someone who's fought many battles. Living off the grid isn't as free as it sounds. Local authorities have often challenged Eustace over building codes, sanitation standards, and property use. His handmade barns, homes, and teaching spaces didn't fit neatly into government regulations. At one point, Turtle Island Preserve was even shut down temporarily due to legal disputes about compliance. For Eustace, it was frustrating. His life's work, teaching people to live simply and responsibly, was being questioned by a system built on paperwork and technicalities. Still, he didn't give up. He fixed what needed fixing, reopened the preserve, and continued sharing his knowledge. That resilience is part of what makes him so fascinating. He doesn't resist modern society just to be rebellious. He does it because he truly believes humans have lost their balance with nature. To him, the barn, the preserve, and every piece of land he owns are part of a living classroom where people can relearn what it means to be capable. Those who have spent time with Eustace often describe him as both intense and kind. He expects people to work hard, to show respect for the tools and the land. When he teaches, he doesn't just explain how to do something, he explains why it matters. Whether it's chopping wood, tanning leather, or cooking over a fire, each skill connects back to something deeper.
By one of the buildings, we've never had any health issue here, and so like after 26 years, a pretty strong statement.
Not for the self-respect, patience, and awareness. His barn, in that sense, isn't just a structure, it's a reflection of his beliefs. Inside it, every tool has a story. Every repair shows persistence. Every detail speaks to years of learning by doing. You begin to understand and learn that the shocking part isn't about the barn's contents at all. It's about realizing how much one person can create when driven by purpose rather than convenience. Eustace's life also challenges what most people consider success. He doesn't own expensive cars, doesn't chase luxury, and doesn't care about social status.
I'm going to teach him how to do it and how to do it right.
His happiness is measured in the strength of his community, the growth of his students, and the health of the land he stewards. For him, modern living often means dependence on technology, on money, on others. His way of life flips that idea. True wealth, he says, comes from knowing you can live with less and still feel whole. That's why so many people are drawn to him. They might not want to live exactly like he does, but they sense there's something valuable in his message. At Turtle Island, visitors see that it's possible to reconnect with older ways without losing yourself. They watch Eustace build fences with handmade nails, cook meals with food grown on his land, and teach kids how to listen to the forest instead of screens. For Eustace, teaching isn't about nostalgia, it's about survival. He believes that one day, when resources become scarce or systems fail, people will need to remember how to live from the land again. His barn, his land, and his teachings are all part of that preparation. It's not about escaping society. It's about restoring balance with it. Eustace's story didn't stay hidden because soon the world wanted to know more, and then he was written and filmed all over the internet. Conway, in books, shows, and media. For someone who's spent most of his life avoiding modern society, Eustace Conway has somehow become one of its most recognized faces. His life, so removed from the mainstream, has fascinated writers, filmmakers, and television audiences for decades. What began as one man's quiet mission to live off the land has turned into a kind of cultural mirror, showing people both what they've lost and what they still long for. Eustace first caught national attention through author Elizabeth Gilbert's 2002 book, The Last American Man. Gilbert, who would later become famous for Eat, Pray, Love, painted a vivid portrait of Conway's world, his childhood in the woods, his love for nature, and his ongoing struggle to live by his values in a world that no longer values simplicity. The book described him as a man out of time, someone born into the wrong century, but determined to keep older ways alive. Readers were captivated. Many saw him as a modern-day Thoreau, someone who didn't just talk about living simply, he actually did it. Others saw him as proof that the American frontier spirit hadn't disappeared. It had just moved deeper into the woods. The Last American Man didn't make Eustace rich or famous in the usual sense, but it introduced his ideas to a generation hungry for authenticity. A decade later, television took notice. The History Channel's Mountain Men brought Eustace into millions of living rooms. Alongside other off-grid personalities, Eustace stood out for his calm, methodical way of living. He wasn't dramatic or loud. He was focused, practical, and quietly intense. Each episode showed him maintaining his land, teaching apprentices, or facing challenges like repairing fences, dealing with weather, or negotiating with local authorities. Unlike many reality shows, Mountain Men didn't exaggerate much with Eustace. It didn't need to. His life was interesting enough on its own. Watching him build, teach, and live on Turtle Island was like seeing an alternate version of modern America, one where the old values of hard work, community, and skill still matter. Over time, Eustace became one of the show's most respected figures. Viewers admired his balance between strength and patience. He wasn't living off-grid for attention. He was doing it because he believed it was right. And that sincerity showed. People who might never set foot in the woods found themselves drawn to his way of thinking. Comments on social media often echoed the same theme. "I wish I had even half of Eustace's skills." Or, "He makes you rethink what's really important." But Eustace's relationship with the media hasn't always been simple. He's not someone who chases fame, and he's been open about his discomfort with how television sometimes simplifies real life. Living off the land isn't easy or glamorous. It's a constant challenge. And while Mountain Men helped spread his message, it also brought attention and expectations that he never asked for. He said before that he values teaching people in person more than through a screen. For him, learning happens best through touch, work, and shared experience, not through edited clips and TV narratives. Still, the show has helped him keep Turtle Island running. Donations, volunteers, and students often find him after seeing him on television. That exposure has allowed him to keep educating others, especially young people, about the importance of respecting nature and living sustainably. In that way, the media has become an unlikely ally. Outside of television, Eustace has also appeared in documentaries, interviews, and podcasts, often focusing on themes of survival, environmental awareness, and simplicity. Each time, he comes across the same: thoughtful, steady, and uninterested in drama. He doesn't lecture, but his words tend to stick. When asked once what freedom meant to him, he said, "Freedom is knowing you can live without anyone else's permission." That line alone has been quoted thousands of times online. Simple, yet powerful. In print and online articles, writers often highlight the contradiction of Eustace's fame. A man who avoids modern society becoming a modern icon. Yet that contradiction might be the reason he connects so deeply with people. In a world that feels increasingly artificial, Eustace represents something real. He's proof that it's still possible to live by your beliefs, even if the world doesn't understand them. His influence has even inspired a wave of homesteaders, wilderness instructors, and minimalist advocates who cite him as a role model. Many have followed in his footsteps, not necessarily moving into the woods, but adopting his mindset, living slower, working with their hands, growing food, and questioning what success really means. Interestingly, despite all the attention, Eustace himself hasn't changed much. Visitors say he's still the same man they've always heard about, focused, humble, and a little stubborn. He still lives on the land, still works with his hands, still teaches anyone willing to learn. Fame may have found him, but he never went looking for it. A world that forgot how to live simply. If you step out of Eustace Conway's barn and back into modern life, the contrast feels almost unreal. One moment, you're surrounded by hand-carved tools, dirt floors, and the quiet hum of wind through the trees. The next, you're scrolling through your phone, staring at glowing screens, ordering things you don't really need. That jump between those two worlds says everything about how far we've drifted. Today, most of us don't build or fix much ourselves. We buy replacements. We don't know where our food comes from or what it takes to make it. It's not really our fault. Society has made life faster and more convenient. But what we've gained in comfort, we've lost in connection. That's exactly what Eustace Conway has been quietly warning about through his way of life. For Eustace, simplicity isn't about rejecting progress. It's about balance. He doesn't hate technology. Just sees how easily people let it control them. In his view, when we forget how to live without it, we lose something essential about being human. His barn, his land, and his teachings all point back to that truth. We've forgotten what it means to truly need something, to work for it, and to appreciate it. What's interesting is that Eustace isn't alone in this belief. Across the world, small groups of people are doing something similar, living off-grid, growing their own food, reducing waste, and cutting their reliance on large systems. But few do it at the scale or depth that Eustace does. His lifestyle isn't a weekend hobby, it's his full-time reality. When visitors come to Turtle Island, they're often in awe at how little he has and how content he seems. They expect hardship, but what they see instead is freedom. No bills stacked on a desk, no traffic noise, no endless rush to meet deadlines. It's quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you notice things again, the sound of the wind, the texture of wood, the smell of rain on dirt. Many who meet him end up rethinking their own lives. They start small, maybe planting a garden, fixing something broken instead of throwing it away, or spending a few hours outdoors without a phone. For some, it's just a nice break from the noise. For others, it sparks something deeper, a desire to reconnect with the basics. That's exactly what Eustace hopes for. But living simply isn't easy. It's demanding, and it forces you to face your limits. That's part of the reason most people don't choose it. There's no instant reward, no shortcut. If you want to eat, you have to grow or hunt. If you want warmth, you have to chop wood. And if something breaks, you can't just call someone to fix it. You have to figure it out yourself. Eustace's barn is filled with reminders of that process. Nothing in there is perfect or shiny. It's all scratched, dented, and worn from use. And that's the beauty of it. Each mark tells a story of effort and purpose. In a world obsessed with newness, that kind of imperfection feels almost radical. There's also a deeper layer to what Eustace teaches. It's not just about skills, but about mindset. He believes people have forgotten patience. Everything now happens fast. Communication, shopping, even relationships. But nature doesn't move that way. You can't rush a seed to grow or a storm to pass. His way of living forces people to slow down and match the rhythm of the land. Ironically, many who visit Turtle Island come looking for something different, only to realize they've found something old, something that was once normal. Not long ago, every community knew how to grow food, repair tools, and work together. People traded skills instead of swiping cards. That world still exists in Eustace's corner of the mountains, preserved like an echo of how life used to feel before everything became complicated.
I'll do my best at coming up with some kind of solution.
Anything is better than what we're doing right now.
And yet, for all the admiration he gets, Eustace's life also makes some people uncomfortable. His independence highlights how dependent most of us have become. It's not meant as judgment, it's just reality. The idea that someone can live almost entirely outside the systems we rely on makes people question the choices they've made. Could they do it if they had to? Eustace's answer to that is simple. Yes, but only if you're willing to work for it. He often says that the modern world has made people forget what they're capable of. His mission, through the barn and the preserve, is to help them remember. Interestingly, some visitors have described their time with Eustace as life-changing, not because of any dramatic event, but because of what it revealed. They realized they didn't need as much as they thought, that maybe the version of success they were chasing wasn't the only one that mattered, that maybe real security doesn't come from having more, but from knowing you could survive with less. Could we live even one day without modern convenience? Could we build, grow, or fix anything from scratch, like Conway? Well, a rising community is up for it. A return to roots in modern times. The simple living movement. In an age ruled by screens, speed, and constant connection, a quiet movement has been growing, one that looks backward to move forward. It's called simple living, but that phrase doesn't quite capture the depth of what's happening. Across the world, people are stepping away from the chaos of modern life to rediscover something older, slower, and more meaningful. They're leaving city apartments for small farms, trading career ladders for garden tools, and finding freedom not in owning more, but in needing less. This shift isn't just about nostalgia. It's a response, a kind of rebellion against burnout, consumerism, and disconnection. For decades, society equated success with wealth, status, and speed. But as more people reach those goals only to feel empty, the idea of enough is starting to replace the idea of more. And in that space, a new way of living is taking shape. One of the clearest symbols of this change is the rise of tiny houses. These small, often mobile homes, sometimes no bigger than a city studio, represent a dramatic turn from excess. They're practical, affordable, and deeply personal. Every inch is used wisely. Every item has a purpose. Living small forces people to decide what really matters. For many, it's not just about saving money or downsizing possessions, it's about regaining control. When you live in a space you built yourself, or one that fits on a trailer, you're no longer chained to a mortgage or a system that demands endless work just to stay afloat. Tiny houses are freedom on wheels, a literal way of saying, I'll go where life feels full again. Meanwhile, homesteading has made a comeback, not as a necessity like in the past, but as a choice. People are raising chickens, growing vegetables, collecting rainwater, and making soap. It's not always glamorous or easy, but it's real. It gives back something that modern living quietly took away: the satisfaction of self-sufficiency. Social media, surprisingly, has played a big part in spreading this lifestyle. Platforms like YouTube and Instagram are filled with channels documenting people's journeys into country living. From young couples renovating old barns to families leaving corporate jobs to start small farms. These stories have inspired thousands to follow. Watching someone plant their first seed or build their first shed offers a sense of calm that scrolling through endless advertisements never could. There's also a psychological side to this. Many who turn to simple living say they do it for their mental health. The modern world is overstimulating. Constant notifications, news, and noise. In contrast, tending a garden or building a fence provides a sense of rhythm and purpose. There's something deeply healing about working with your hands and seeing the results of your labor. Even in cities, the spirit of this movement has taken root. Urban gardens, rooftop farms, and community compost projects have sprung up in places once covered by concrete. These aren't grand gestures, they're small but powerful reminders that nature isn't something distant. It's right here, waiting to be welcomed back. Eustace Conway's lifestyle fits perfectly within this growing movement, even if he started living that way long before it became a trend. He's a reminder that simple living isn't new, it's just newly remembered. For him, it's not a reaction to technology or modern problems, it's simply the most natural way to exist. What's different now is that more people are realizing he might have been right all along.
Simple activities like butchering a rooster, or tanning a deer skin, or rubbing sticks together to make a fire.
Simple living today also includes a push towards sustainability. As climate change and environmental crises worsen, many people are turning back to the land not only for peace of mind, but also as a form of responsibility. Using solar panels, collecting gray water, composting waste. These are not just lifestyle choices anymore, they're statements. They say, I want to live in a way that gives more than it takes. But it's not always easy. The romantic image of off-grid life often fades when faced with reality: broken tools, failed crops, long winters, and isolation. Many who try find themselves caught between two worlds, too far from modern comfort, yet not entirely ready for full self-reliance. The truth is, simple living requires hard work and constant learning. It's simple, yes, but not easy. Still, the appeal keeps growing. After the pandemic, for instance, thousands of families moved to rural areas. The sudden shift in priorities, valuing time, health, and space, made people see that happiness might not be found in crowded cities or endless work hours. Instead, it could exist in a quiet morning, feeding animals, a shared meal of homegrown food, or the satisfaction of building something from scratch. Even governments and communities are starting to recognize this change. Local councils have begun to support small-scale farming initiatives and rural living projects. Some universities now offer courses on permaculture and sustainable agriculture. It's as if society is slowly realizing that progress doesn't have to mean disconnection. Technology, ironically, has also helped the movement grow. Solar power, water filtration systems, and efficient heating have made off-grid life more practical than ever. People can live sustainably without completely giving up modern comfort. It's a bridge between two worlds, the ancient and the new, proving that simplicity doesn't mean primitive. What's most inspiring, though, is the mindset that comes with it. People who live simply often talk about gratitude. They value every resource, every meal, every sunrise. They know the effort behind each comfort, and that knowledge changes how they see the world. It's not about rejecting progress, it's about redefining it. And in that sense, the simple living movement isn't just about cabins or gardens. It's about a quiet cultural correction, a reminder that maybe, in chasing everything, we lost something essential, and that the path forward might actually be the path back. Eustace Conway once said that nature teaches you how to live if you just pay attention. That's the heart of it. The people building tiny houses, tending to chickens, or learning to grow their own food are doing exactly that, paying attention again. Discover more stories like Conway's in this channel, so hit subscribe and stay curious.